construction's quite creative in its own, isn't it? I mean,
True.
every single day is a new problem, a new issue, something you haven't run into before, and you've got to design something on the fly or figure out how to get this part to that site without spending a fortune on shipping and stuff like that. So I think in a lot of ways it is really very, very creative. And I think people don't realize that about it. They think it's just digging holes and following plans and stuff. But there's so much that goes into it that's sort of innovative. And every single day, really, you're inventing these new ways to do things, even if it's something small. And I think that's quite exciting. And that's what I like about it.
Welcome back to Constructive, everybody. I have Tamara here with me today, and I know you've got a bunch of experience in the fence industry, but tell me a little bit about your background and what all that experience was like and how it shaped your understanding of what really matters to your customers.
Well, I actually went to a technical high school. So I started in the construction sort of world when I was in my teens already, which wasn't too strange because my dad was a civil engineer, family business. And then I went to a technical college and I studied construction there. And then I ended up in the defense industry working as an estimator and a project manager. And I was really thrown in at the deep end because I worked for one of the biggest fence companies in Africa. And we were doing all kinds of crazy things. We did the first boat fence systems around prisons, and we were doing electric fences and electronics and all kinds of stuff like that. So I really got a very deep understanding of like high security fence and stuff. And then over the years, I've kind of got involved in a lot of different things. So marketing and all that kind of stuff, doing bids and all those sorts of things. But the one thing that I've always had to do in every fence company I've ever worked for is CAD drawings, because none of them have in-house CAD capabilities. So I've always been the person doing the CAD drawings. And that was kind of the whole idea behind Draw Fence that we created, was to make a tool that makes it easy for fence companies to do fence drawings, like their standard drawings, day-to-day stuff. Yeah, and really it's just having experienced that issue myself. I knew it was a problem, and I knew it was a problem for most fence companies. So I thought, why not build something that solves it?
Yeah, tell me about that, like just the pain of drawing fences. I know a fence construction project might seem really simple to everybody, but there is paperwork involved. And tell me about why it is a challenge to get fence drawings together for a project like that.
Well, I mean, especially on the commercial side of fencing. So, residential, you can still get away with just telling them, oh, it's going to look like this and that's it. But on the commercial side, you've got drawings when you bid a project, especially if you're offering an alternative. Your customer's going to want to know what's it going to look like and what are all the specs and all that sort of thing. Then once you've been awarded the project, often you'll have to do drawings before you can do anything. So shop drawings for gate manufacturing and all that sort of thing. And then every time you have a change order request, they'll want to have a drawing of what are you proposing for this change order. And then at the end of the project, you've got closeout documentation. So you've got to do as-builts and stuff like that. So there's actually so many places in a contract where you will be asked for fence drawings. And if you can't do them in-house, it becomes a bit of a problem, because you either got to be like cutting and pasting onto a drawing template or downloading it and trying to edit it in Adobe, or, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff happening. Some people even try and do it in like MS Paint, and it looks terrible and it looks really bad. Yeah. So I've seen it all.
For sure. Tell me a little bit about the product. I think I looked into it a little bit. It looks like it's online, but just explain it to me.
Okay, so what we've done is, if you've ever used one of those legal form generators where you select sort of different things, where you are and what it's for and all that sort of thing, and then it generates a legal document for you. That's actually the reason why we built this, and how we got the idea is we thought, well, the fences, like with anything else, there's a set of input variables where you're going to have different heights and this kind of footing and that kind of, all the different stuff. So we can build a system that allows them to select those things from form-based input, and then pulls a drawing that we've done in 1-to-1 scale in CAD into the drawing, puts it on a drawing sheet, puts all the project information and the company information, everything on a drawing sheet. And it takes 2 to 5 minutes instead of 2 to 4 hours to do that.
It's awesome. And you and I have been talking previously about this, but I just think One of the things about tech for construction that I think you and I both share this vision, it should be like a communication tool. It should facilitate better communication, more transparency. Do you agree, and kind of flesh out how you've leaned into that in your process?
I mean, absolutely. I think, a lot of people are very visual about stuff like this. And especially like with our tool in particular, if you tell somebody, I'm going to build a fence that's 6 foot high and it's going to be this and it's going to be that, if they're not what I call fence people and they don't speak fence, they don't know what you're talking about. So if you give
Right.
them a drawing of that and they go, oh, okay, I've seen that kind of fence, I know what you're talking about. Even if they're not like an architect or an engineer or something like that. But just in general, I think communication is such a big thing for keeping projects on track and for getting things done and for making sure that everything's done correctly and stuff like that. I think communication is one of the things that greases the wheels in construction, and we don't do enough of it. And any little way that we could help to make it easier for people to communicate stuff to each other, that's why we did what we did.
Yeah, I hope I don't go on too long here, but I want to get into a little bit of a story about my childhood and just growing up with an engineering father, seeing a lot of construction drawings around the house and kind of at a young age trying to figure out what are these drawings communicating and what do they mean? And it seems so cryptic. It's almost a puzzle, and you got to match this footnote to this page. And then you want to try to, my dad would tell me, even when I was in junior high or high school, like, this is a 3D building that we've turned into 2D prints. So you have to try to look at this 2D drawing and think of it in 3 dimensions. And it kind of, for me, it was a cool puzzle to solve. But I think a lot of people in our industry are not interested in all those translations and trying to figure out how to read a set of drawings. So I just like that one of the things you seem to be pursuing is make this stuff more accessible to people who haven't gone through the learning curve of CAD and don't go through an architectural degree to learn every kind of footnote, and you can kind of make it more accessible to people who are actually building the fence, which I think that causes a lot of problems in our industry when the people actually building it don't really know what the drawings mean. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, but I did have the training. So I do understand what an elevation is and what a plan view is and what a detail is and all that stuff. But obviously, there are people who don't understand that. And that's also why we do things like the multi-sheet drawings. So when you draw a certain kind of fence, it gives you the elevation of the fence, plus details of the footings, plus the salvages, plus whatever else, whatever other details are built into that drawing generator. So you get like a whole drawing set without having to do multiple drawings. You just fill in one form and you get everything that you need for that particular fence. And, even small things like in Canada, we technically use the metric system, but everybody in the fence industry still uses English units. So they're measuring in feet and inches and stuff like that. And, it gets complicated. So you've got to have both dimensions on your drawings and all those kinds of things. So it is kind of a small thing, but it really does become a big part of the project, because if you get stuff wrong, obviously there's going to be problems, expensive
Yeah.
problems.
I imagine if not already, you're going to experience people from other kind of niches in the construction industry coming to you and being like, the way that you've solved this problem in the fence sector can apply to others. Do you already see that? And what do you think you did well in your little niche?
I mean, I think it's applicable to anything where you've got sort of standards and specifications. Obviously for building houses, you can't really do it, but something like kitchen cabinets, there's only so many ways they can be configured, and there's so many ways you can have different. So you could do the same thing for a lot of different things. We're also thinking about it for specifiers, because when like a specifier talks to a fence company, they often struggle to get information and specs and drawings because estimators are busy. They're trying to get work, they're trying to get jobs done and stuff like that. So we thought, well, if we build something that they can also go and it's pre-programmed with the options that they have for that particular type of fence or whatever, they can quite easily specify their job. And if they don't have the, gosh, what happened?
Don't worry. It broke up a little bit, but if you can pick up wherever, we're back in it, and
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
figure
So
out a way to splice it together.
yeah, I mean, even if they don't know what that particular type of fence is supposed to have, they've only got the options that are available. So it's like ordering off a Chinese menu, so they can just go, oh, I want to have that number 16 and number 12, and they can just put together a fence spec like that. And I think that needs to be a lot of the stuff that is done in the industry is very like high level, and you've got to have a degree and you've got to have training and all that stuff to, use BIM and Revit and all these things. And, but the people who are actually doing the work, they don't know how to use those things. A bottom up solution that makes things easy for people just makes more sense.
True. You mentioned something that made me think about kind of another side of this is like serving our clients. And a lot of times in the industry, we have a number of clients. Sometimes as a subcontractor, the GC is our client, but ultimately the people who are going to use, in your case, the fence around their building, they're the ultimate client, right? So if we're really thinking about serving them, you mentioned kind of like picking out something off a Chinese restaurant, like construction is so not like that. When you go to buy a car or something on Amazon, you get to really dig into what the specs of this product are and what am I going to get for this amount of money and when will it arrive, and all of these things become pretty close to known variables. In construction, they all stay extremely variable. And I feel like you are kind of helping us go in that direction where a client, in your case, the end user, wants a fence, and we just make it a little simpler for them to be like, I want a 10-foot high fence and I want it to cover the perimeter of my building. Now go do it.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I've seen fences as a line item on, a bid, perimeter fence. And that's it, really. And maybe somewhere there's a little drawing somewhere on a drawing sheet, but it's really an afterthought for a lot of people until you actually get into it and you realize how many different variables and combinations and stuff like that is. I mean, we built single swing gate drawing generators, 4, 5, and 6 foot high, in various widths and stuff. And we had to do 243 CAD drawings for our library just to make that one drawing generator work, all the different hinge and latch combinations and options and things like that. So, and that's not even counting all the details that we did for those as well. So, it seems simple, but it's really not. Yeah.
The other thing, go ahead if you had something. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No. I mean, it's just I get kind of, it's the same. I was in the roofing industry for a while, and it's the same thing. The roof. Okay, fine. What color is it? What profile are you using? What fixing method are you using? What kind of flashings do you need? There's a lot of things that goes into it, and we're just trying to make it easy for people by doing all the hard work for them.
It's awesome. I feel like this is something we talked about. There's two things. One was you had mentioned, I just think about in your position, you're in a smaller sector of the construction industry. I keep calling it that, but you mentioned how big it is. Can you give me that number again, how much money we spend on fences?
It's $30 to $40 billion globally per year. A big chunk of that is in the United States, but we're talking billions of dollars. Yeah. I mean, there's fence projects that I've personally worked on 20 years ago that were like $1 million, so it's not a small thing. It's not a little throwaway $10,000 job or something. It can be quite complicated.
And the light bulb went on in my head when you had said that previously, just that we all kind of sit here thinking my project is small or my niche is small and what I'm doing is just a pain for me. I would encourage everyone, get into LinkedIn, go start searching Reddit forums about the problem you're having in our industry, and let's start collaborating like you're doing and trying to find solutions. Because like you've just pointed out to me, if you think solving a problem for the fence industry isn't a big deal, like it is, it's a big deal. And I'm very happy to have you because I think about these, I'm in San Francisco near Silicon Valley, so I get to see a lot of up and coming tech trying to serve the construction industry. And I say that serve lightly because a lot of times it does feel like these tools are AI tools in the market that are solutions searching for a problem. And I just like that your approach has been find a problem and solve it, and in kind of that order. Do you want to talk to that?
Well, I think people have realized that construction tech is like underserved, right? There's not a lot of options for construction technology. So there's a lot of opportunity here. And I also think that a lot of the people that are trying to solve problems or trying to create these products, they might not be from a construction background. So they're approaching it from a tech bro type of, situation where they want to put AI into everything and they want to make this big thing that does everything, all that kind of thing. but they haven't really lived with the problems. They haven't really struggled with the stuff that we've struggled with. And I mean, if you've been in the construction industry, you know exactly, 20 years ago, I had all these like little pieces of paper stuck up on the wall with, formulas
Yeah.
for calculating this and how many bricks per square meter and stuff like that. So
Yes.
we've got very unique problems. And I think having been in the industry for such a long time and having seen it firsthand, that makes all the difference, really. So I
I
don't know
agree.
how those construction tech things are going to work out. I think some of them are very flashy and they probably get all the VCs very excited and stuff. Ultimately, it's the people that are going to use it that are, the most important. And they're not interested in AI and, big enterprise level stuff. They want something that's quick and simple and gets the job done.
But you are pretty tech savvy, so give me some of your thoughts about AI. I know some of our end users of these products, like the guys in the field building this stuff, don't want to use software. But what are your hopes for AI? Do you experiment with it? Do you like what's on the horizon?
Like using it to generate ideas. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done because it's still not where it should be. Everything you got to kind of take it and massage it a little bit to get it where you need it to be. But it does speed things up a bit. And I think AI is really going to shine in closed systems for engineering, medicine, things like that, where there's these huge amounts of information that you've got to process, and it's going to take a human being so long to get through it. If we have tools that does that
Hmm.
speeds up that part of the process for people, that's where it's really gonna make a difference. And I think right now the AI is like the dot-com bubble in the 90s.
Yeah.
Everything is AI. You got like AI. I mean, remember internet fridges? Does
Hmm.
anyone still have an internet fridge? But at the time, the Internet of Things was so huge and everything had to have the internet in it. And now
Yeah.
we're like, okay, we don't need internet fridges. We don't need that. And I think AI is going to be the same. It's going to kind of collapse a bit, but become more focused.
Hmm. I love that. That feels like a really balanced view of it and helps me not because sometimes I teeter on the extremes. I'm either like it's gonna save all our lives and make everything better, or we're doomed to some kind of apocalypse. And I think you're probably right. I think it's somewhere in the middle, and I hope that we get to
Right.
decide some of that future. And part of it is people like me and you trying to say, yes, let's use AI for what it's good at, and let's care about the people first. And I wonder if we could get into that too, because you just strike me, the conversations we've had, as someone who really does care about the human side of our business and building trust and relationships. And I want to get into your marketing experience as well and some of the writing you do, but maybe just in general, do you think in this age of AI and especially in our industry of construction, how are like the soft skills providing value to you? And do you think they're important?
Well, I mean, even when I started out in this business, in South Africa, we have what we call a site agent, which is someone who drives around to all the different construction sites and makes sure that everything's on track and talks to all the foremen and stuff like that. And it's kind of somewhere between a project manager and a site super, sort of, in that sort of thing. And we had guys that would go to the site and they'd sit in their air conditioned truck and they'd watch the guys digging holes and sweating and stuff like that. And those were the guys that none of the field crews liked or respected or anything like that. And then you'd have people who would go and get their hands dirty and, I would get measuring out and marking and pick up a shovel and dig a hole or whatever, even though they're supposed to be the boss. I think that, you know, there's a bit too much division sometimes between the people on the paper side and the people on the actual getting the job done side. And then I think
Amen.
that's one of the big barriers. And I've always tried, whenever I've worked with crews and stuff like that, I've always tried to be that person, that goes to site and actually listens to their problems and solves their problems. Because sometimes they tell you, I can't get this done because this is too difficult. And you say, no, well, we don't have money for that. So I'll be like, okay, well, maybe we can get a change order because this is difficult and, the digging is harder or whatever, and we can get the money for you to do something. I try and solve their problems. And I think that's what's been throughout my career. And that's probably also a draw offense is I'm trying to solve people's problems because it just makes everyone's life easier.
I love that. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about your experiences with writing for our industry. And I know we're repeating ourselves a little bit here, but just I think this industry has a storytelling problem. And I know you agree with me, but talk to me about what you've seen, how we can improve that storytelling.
Yeah, so I mean, I actually started writing as part of my construction career because I was an estimator, project manager. I used to write method statements and quality management plans and bid proposals and stuff like that. And then in about 2008, I thought, well, I can write stuff, so I'm going to start a side hustle doing writing. And I started writing for the internet. And then I got involved in the internet, and then I got obsessed with like search engine optimization and web design and stuff like that. But we do have a writing and a communication problem in this industry, and we're not very good at articulating stuff in a way that end users can understand it. I always say, like, even from the writing side, I write for companies like Procore and Trimble and stuff like that. And if you don't know construction, you can't actually write about construction credibly. You know, I can tell you why concrete hardens because of the chemical processes and stuff like that. But if you've got someone who's just doing research about concrete, they're not going to know all that stuff. So, you know, it becomes this like what we call writing world fluff, where it's not really useful to anyone. Yeah. So, I mean, a few years ago, I just thought, well, wait a minute. Construction has a big communication and writing problem, and I know how to write and I know construction. So why not just put the two together? And that's when I started the Construction Writer, which is my other business.
It makes
Yeah,
me
and
think you
that's been going
probably
quite
have
well.
a it makes me think you probably have a strong opinion about using AI in writing. I imagine you're probably not completely closed off to it, but that I was just thinking about fluff and yeah, like obviously our LLMs have a lot of the data and a lot of the information about our industry, so they can make stuff sound professional about our industry, but it just strikes me as like what you were saying about people who try to write about this industry who don't know it. I feel like if you're using AI a little bit too much to make you sound like you know more than you are, you do, it will come off like fluff as well. Do you agree?
Yeah, and the problem with AI for the writing side is it's using the internet as its source information, but it doesn't know how to fact check. You
Mm,
know, when I'm researching something, I stick to like research papers and university websites and stuff like that. AI, I read a story the other day where it's getting most of its information from Reddit, you
right.
know, which is user generated content. So nobody's fact checking anything. And I think that's where, yeah, and then there's also hallucinations where it doesn't actually know what something is, so it just kind of makes something up. And you know, that's a very bad idea if you're writing to grow your credibility.
Yes. Well, how do you think you use it in a positive way then? Tell me the right way to use it.
Well, I use it for idea generation. So I do articles for magazines and stuff like that as well. So I will say something like as a prompt, give me 25 questions that I can ask somebody who is in this role in this part of the industry with a focus on this particular keyword concept or something like that. And then it spits out a list of questions that it thinks would be, you know, might be stuff that I haven't thought of, and that kind of stuff. For SEO, a lot of it is about keywords and phrases and stuff like that. So if you've got a list of keywords, you can say, you know, give me a list of 100 titles for this keyword phrase, you know, that would, you know, work for, and whatever the target audience is and stuff like that. So content strategy, it's really good. I wouldn't write anything with AI, but I am a writer, so, you know, it's
I
easy
like
for
it as
me
a
to say that.
research assistant, kind of just like I've always thought of it that cliche, like the more you put into it, the more you'll get out. So, like you're saying, if you can write a really good prompt, you're gonna get a really good response. But I still think no matter what the response is, just like you're saying, I would never take that and call it my own content. Like I would use it as a, hey, I'm trying to add a little snippet about something from a book in the 90s that was discussing this, you know, like really hard things to research on your own. It does pretty good at giving you the direction to head down, I think. So I like it for that.
It's
What do you,
It's like a prompt
sorry.
tool
Yeah,
for like if you're writing as well, you get those writing prompts where they'll say, you know, just one sentence about something, and then it's like, oh yeah, I haven't thought of that or whatever. So that
exactly.
that's basically where I use it mostly.
Let's talk to the people listening. I think last time I just gave you kind of an opening to talk about anything, but what would you like to tell to yourself or to someone younger entering this industry? Give us all some advice.
Well, actually, when we spoke last time, you said something about you wanted to go into a creative field and then you ended up in construction because
Truth?
it's more stable and financially viable and stuff. But I think construction's quite creative in its own, isn't it? I mean,
True.
every single day is a new problem, a new issue, something you haven't run into before, and you got to design something on the fly or figure out how to get this part to that site without spending a fortune on shipping and stuff like that. So I think in a lot of ways, it is really very, very creative. And I think people don't realize that about it. They think it's just digging holes and following plans and stuff, but there's so much that goes into it that's sort of innovative. And every single day, really, you're inventing these new ways to do things, even if it's something small. And I think that's quite exciting. And yeah, that's what I like about it.
I'm just like, you just helped me so much there. I mean, those are things I probably realized on my own anyway, but you expressing it that way was just like, yeah, I've fought this industry thinking I have too much of a creative brain for it. And I think now that you just said that, I'm like, what was I talking about? Our industry is creation. We're creating things. That's like what we do. We create physical stuff. We take an idea and turn it into something real. So I'm not going to say it that way anymore. But yeah, I think what I was trying to get at is I felt artsy and less hands on. And now I'm realizing there's art in construction, and people like you are helping me
Absolutely.
see it.
Absolutely. And like we spoke about last time as well, it's all connected. Estimating and bidding things is marketing. So you're presenting how your company works and what you do, and giving people this impression of what your company is about. But the way you do the project is also marketing. If your guys are turning up on time and they look the part and they're wearing branded T-shirts and stuff, that's marketing. And every
Hmm.
time you interact with somebody who's got a problem or a change order that needs to get done or something like that, that's all marketing. That's all public relations. That's all promoting your business to the industry. And what I found as well is, like I said, problem solving is such a huge thing for me. And when you are the person who solves problems for people, you'll become their go-to guy. So whether it's fencing or roofing or whatever it might be, if they know that they don't have to worry about fighting with you for score points, that you're not going to, you're just not going to communicate with them, or they know you're going to get the job done on time. It's going to be to spec, and they're not going to have to worry about it and everything. Every single time one of those jobs comes up, they're going to call it. You know,
Hmm.
so
It's true.
to think more about construction rather than just this little thing, and think of it more as such a huge. It just encompasses everything. It's not just one little idea.
Yeah, I think the other thing we discussed last time we talked, I don't want to skip, is we talked a little bit about residential and home renovations, and how myself, I'm thinking about doing a bunch of renovations, can't afford any of them. I've also seen just all my friends who they bring a contractor into their home and then they complain about it all the time. And you and I are talking about how creative and there's art in construction, and there's a utopian view of it that I want to get to and love, but there's also the reality where construction projects just go poorly often, and it's hard to keep a client happy, especially in a residential client, because this is my home and you're breaking everything apart. And I just wonder if what were your thoughts about that?
It all goes back to communication again. Make sure people know what's going to happen. Make sure they know how long it's going to take. Be realistic about delivery times and things that could go wrong. The more you tell people up front, and the more you kind of explain to them what the process is going to be. I found that even when you tell people no, if you do it in a way that makes sense to them, and you just communicate with them, and they don't have to chase you and try to find out information on their own. um, I get emails all the time of people saying, "Thanks for responding to me. You're the first person who responded to me." When I answer a question for someone or something like that. And that's another thing construction companies are terrible at, is just don't ignore them. Just even if you can't help them, just say, "I'm sorry, I can't do that. But maybe you could try this," or we don't do that kind of thing, but we can do this or something. And I mean, I think we spoke last time, many years ago, I wrote a book about construction,
That
contract
was right,
management and
yeah.
stuff like that. And that was the whole idea, because there's so many people that have so much stuff go wrong. And the book was written when I was still in South Africa, but I think it's universal because it covers things that just make everything easier. Like I said to you, specifications, rather than just saying, I want to paint it white, you tell them what kind of paint it's going to be and how many coats you're going to apply and how you're going to apply it and all those other things. Just timelines and how to manage them and stuff like that. I think, yeah, communication is such an important thing from start to finish.
Yeah, I don't know if you know that quote, but I can't remember where it's from. I think it's something like, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men and gather the wood and divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Like it's trying to get people to do a building project. I'm working on one right now for a school district, and it's trying to help them see the vision of like, hey, ultimately we want to give you guys a new building or a better building than you have now. In the middle of this, there's going to be pain for all of us because we're going to have to move people, and then everybody's just like, no, don't do this, don't do that. And casting that vision of like a construction project, the goal of it, we're going to get a better building for you, but in the meantime, there's a lot of pain. It's a hard thing. And I think you're right. I think it's about setting expectations, but it's also getting people involved in that process. Like, I'm finding just involving faculty and staff and like, this is what we're trying to do to the building, even if a lot of it is they don't want it and don't like it, and just getting them involved and communicating with them eases that tension. So I totally agree with you. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, I'm going to link some stuff in the descriptions, like drawafence.com and whatever else you want, but find Tamara on LinkedIn as well. Reach out to her. What else do you want to plug?
Gee, I think I've covered most of what I just think, if you have an idea, if you have something that you think can work or whatever, or that you want to try, or a big dream, whatever it might be, just do it. And you
Love
spend
it.
so much time thinking about things and, wondering what would happen if I did this, what if I did that, or whatever. Like, you just then do it. My dad had so many ideas for inventions and stuff, and he never got around to doing it. And then other people did the same thing and patented it and made it turn off as a carpe diem, seize the day.
Yes, we're giving you all permission to go out and fail a bunch of times and find a way to succeed. Thanks, everybody.